Hello everyone, my name is Sniping is Fun, and I welcome you all back to my next The Five list in this long-running series of The Five list in what is dubbed now my Season 2 return. I've been doing it for a few weeks. This is my next topic. We've talked about various topics so far, ranging from DLC for Mortal Kombat 11 and the MCU movies, heroes and villains, to new legends for the W2K series, and anime that should get a remade series, so on and so forth. If you haven't seen those yet, they're in the playlist. When I add these, I would suggest you go watch those and enjoy them all you want. Whenever I change the thumbnails, name of videos, blah blah blah. This list is going to be another list just like the Mortal Kombat 11 DLC one. It's going to be DLC for a fighting game, but an entirely different fighting game. And I wanted to do this list as well, given that I haven't got a chance to first off, I haven't got a chance to play the game, but I'm interested in it because I used to be such a big fan of this series. That series being Power Rangers, Super Sentai and everything. The game being Power Rangers Battle for the Grid, and this list being the 5 characters that should be DLC for Power Rangers Battle for the Grid. Like if you don't know exactly what Battle for the Grid is, it's basically a downloadable game on like PlayStation, Switch, I think Xbox One as well, like PlayStation 4, Switch, Xbox One, and whatnot. Probably PC too, probably on Steam, probably as well. It's basically a 2-on-2, like 2D style, like Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter and whatnot, fighting game of Power Rangers characters. Namely, it's dealing with the Battle for the Grid storyline, like dealing with like Lord Drakkon, who's basically an evil Tommy, Green White Ranger type thing from the future. It basically deals with that comic book story, and it deals with just a world where all these different Power Rangers and villains just come together and they fight each other. It's basically a budget game right now, and it only has about, I think, 9 to 10 characters ranging from like various Rangers, namely Mighty Morphin characters, but there's characters in there from like various forms of various series of the Power Rangers and Super Sentai universe. And I'm assuming like there's going to be more DLC for it, and I'm assuming with how much fan reception, I'm sure a lot of fans of Power Rangers, of fighting games, are loving this game and loving the concept of being a big mashup of all these different Power Rangers series. I'm assuming there's going to be more DLC, and I want to give my 5 choices I truly feel should be in this game and should be DLC for this game. And I'm going to say I'm mostly focusing on either villains that don't have a face, and Power Rangers that are obviously in their suit, because I think licensing wise, like I said, I haven't played the actual game yet, but I'm sure they're trying to avoid licensing the actual actors who played them, and I don't know if the characters are actually voice acted by the characters or not. So I'm assuming they don't have the characters, like the actors and the characters voiced or their face. So I went for this list. When I was thinking about this list, I was thinking about villains that are like in armor or their face covered, or monster type characters, and Power Rangers in their suits, so not someone that you could legitimately see their face. If I did actually do that, I probably would have at least a few extra different additions for this roster, for this 5 list I'm having right now. But I think I came up with a pretty decent 5, and I think a 5 that I think a lot of people would mostly agree with me on, and I think they'd all add something to the roster, add something to the fighting styles and everything. And yeah, that's about it. And without this intro going on way too long, let's get this video started with the 5 characters that should be DLC in Power Rangers Battle for the Grid. My first character here will be a villain-esque character. It is a villain from In Space, and it was definitely probably one of my favorite characters back then, especially for a villain side of things in Power Rangers. I used to have a toy of him. He was really cool. He has such a cool look. He'd be like a powerhouse type character with a sword and whatnot, which a lot of the Power Rangers characters seem to have, like melee weapons like swords and like axes and spears and whatnot. So I think he'd fit right in, and he's more of a powerhouse character. He has a cool look, and he's a fan favorite, I think, in terms of villains of the Power Rangers universe. And that goes to Ecliptor. Like immediately when I saw them debuting this game off, and like more characters and more characters and more characters were being revealed, and I'm thinking about who would make sense. One of the first characters to come to mind was Ecliptor. He was one of the major villains of the In Space season. He has this cool look about him. He's like this big giant metal armored man with like neon bluish turquoise lighting like on him, like designs. He wields a big giant sword. He'd be a powerhouse character, so think of him as maybe a slower powerhouse character. And he represents In Space, which I don't think has a single character in Battle for the Grid yet. I'm not sure. Like I said, I'm not fully sure of the roster entirely yet. I haven't played the game yet, but I was keeping up with like the advertising and reveals for it for the most part. I think he'd be a cool villain. I think a lot of fans like his character. I think it's good in space representation. The moveset would be different. I think it's just put one and one together, and I think I think he just makes a lot of sense. Number 2 goes to a ranger that I think makes a lot of sense. I know we have quite a few red rangers, but he's not specifically a red ranger. He's the 6th ranger of his series. He has a cool moveset to him. He'd be a very varied character between his sword and his blaster, his handgun, and he was pretty quick and agile. He has combat experience, and this is probably one of my favorite series and probably one of the most well-received, popular Power Ranger series of all time, and that goes to the Quantum Ranger Eric from Time Force. I think he'd be a cool character to add. Like we probably could easily throw in a couple more 6th Rangers like in the lineup. I think easily because they would stand out. I think a little bit more than just throwing in a lot of reds and blues and pinks and greens and blacks and whatever Rangers and Red Rangers. He's a Red Ranger technically, but he's the 6th Ranger, and it's more of like a maroon red anyways. And I think he'd be a good like agile character because he's if we're going by at least the Power Rangers continuity, Eric. I mean, even in the Japanese continuity with Super Sentai, the character is a police officer, basically, so they know how to fight, so they can do hand-to-hand combat. But I think he could heavily focus on his blaster rifle being like him being a ranged character, and then do a couple sword attacks. But I think it should be mostly punches and kicks, a couple of swords, but mostly a lot of blasters. Make him a agile character that shoots you from a distance, and then summons his Zord to destroy you and kick your butt with his ultimate attacks and whatnot. I think it'd be kind of cool. And Time Force, I think, is also a series that does not have representation yet in Battle for the Grid. So, please. My 3rd character will also be a 6th Ranger from a series that's very well. It's funny I'm saying very well received, but a lot of these early seasons of Power Rangers were super very well received. I'm not saying I'm downing the newer seasons because you will see a character later on this list that's from a newer season, but I think a lot of the old school seasons are very nostalgic, are very classic, and I think we don't have a character yet from this one yet. I don't think so, and I think it would be kind of cool because it's representation of a character is in this season, but also is in Mighty Morphin, but not representing Mighty Morphin specifically, but he also wields a weapon. It's not a sword. I think it'd be kind of cool, and that goes to the Gold Zeo Ranger, who is Jason from the original team. I think it would be kind of cool to see, even though they're not going for their actors, I'm assuming they're going to go more for Jason's rendition of this character than Trey's. But you can go either way because it's basically the same character regardless. I don't think there's a Zeo character yet, or at the very least there might be one, but it's not him. I'm hoping. I don't think so. And basically he wields a power staff, the golden power staff. So it's like a long staff, and he'll just smack you. He'll probably be a very ranged character who can attack you from a semi-distance. And he'd probably be semi-quick, but semi-powerhouse. And is a 6th Ranger, so you could probably make a fairly unique moveset for him. And it represents Zeo, which I think a lot of fans would want. I mean, I mentioned here about, in space and Time Force, and those are super heavily requested, popular Power Rangers seasons. I think Zeo it probably is a smidge more because that's the first season post Mighty Morphin, and it had a good premise. The theme is badass. I think it's really cool, and to get representation from that era that's not Mighty Morphin specifically, but still in that Zordon era, I think it would be kind of cool to represent that a little bit more as well. So yeah, Gold Ranger Zeo. My 4th character will be essentially the last Ranger on my list, even though technically the evil villains at the end kind of fit in that category. Me saying that, if you're a fan of Power Rangers, you might know who my 5th character is. I'm not getting there yet, but my 4th one, though, is the character that's going to be semi-newer. It's not a new season, but it's a season from the 2000s era, and it's a character from around the time frame that I fell out of Power Rangers, which is kind of sad because once I saw Linkara's review years ago on this season, I'm like, my God, that season was good. What did I miss out? I missed out on this season. It was so good. And that's going to go to the SPD Blue Ranger Sky. I think he'd be kind of a cool character to add. It's a semi-newer season. I don't think we even have pretty much any characters outside of some Megaforce stuff and like some of the more recent ones, but like the newer like the Disney era, I don't think we really have characters from yet, except for maybe one. Like I said, the roster's not going in my brain right now. I'm not fully sure. But I don't think we have any Disney era Power Ranger characters yet. And I think he was pretty cool. The SPD characters were pretty cool because they didn't just get powers from being Power Rangers. This was set in like the future. They were like almost all humans, all people had like genetic powers to them. So it's powers they normally have versus powers from the Power Rangers, transformations and whatnot thrown together. And I think Sky, I picked Sky specifically because, first off, we don't really have any Blue Rangers in there. And I doubt they'd pick his Red Ranger rendition from the later in the series when he gets promoted at the end of the season. I think it'd be kind of cool. We don't really have too many Blue Rangers, so pick him as Blue Ranger. His genetic powers, he can create force field projections. So basically think Ultron from Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, basically how you can use like the stones in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, and like I think Ultron basically was key in using the stones for this and putting you in a bubble, like stuff like that, putting you like in a bubble and catching your opponents and whatnot. I think that'd be kind of a cool fighting style for him to be like a catch and grab character and have him be able to catch you within like force fields and whatnot, block you and everything. And then in terms of like his Power Rangers abilities, he can use the patrol cycle. So you get, since they're cops, they're futuristic cops, have him be able to do some attacks where he rides his motorcycle and runs you over and whatnot. He could use it. He can go in the SWAT mode and use the Delta Enforcer, which is I think a gun, some sort of big laser gun, and then the Delta Max Striker, which is like a sword melee-based weapon. I think he'd be a pretty cool, unique character mix of force field projections and gunplay and running you over a motorcycle, and it represents a series that I know for a fact does not have a character yet in this series, and it is a pretty well-received series from the Disney era of Power Rangers. Yeah, I would say the SPD Blue Ranger makes a lot of sense. And my final character, or characters in a sense, I put on this list, and the villain, my second and last villain representation in terms of my choices here, and I've wanted them, and I know everyone else wants them, and I remember seeing comment sections when this game was being announced on videos, and people were requesting them so damn much, and I have to include them because I so badly want to see them in, this game. And I mean, I know they're saying them because technically it's a group of 5, and depending on how they do it, if they probably only pick one of them or somehow make them all one character. I don't know how, but can we please have a Psycho Ranger? Like, you can pick Psycho Black, Psycho Red, Psycho Pink, Psycho Yellow, Psycho Blue. You can pick any of them you want. But can we please have a Psycho Ranger? They were major villains in space, and then they came back in Lost Galaxy, so it's a major villain, like one of the earliest back then that transcended series. They were in the end of the Zordon era in space, and then they were brought back to life in the Lost Galaxy timeline, in the Lost Galaxy series. I think it'd be kind of cool. Now, more than likely they'd pick a specific one, so probably I would say maybe Psycho Red would be the cliche one they'd pick since he's the leader. But I'm thinking maybe they can, I don't know how it specifically works in the game, but maybe make them costumes. I mean, I know they fight differently because they use different weapons. They basically have the opposite weapons of the in-space Rangers, but I would say, yeah, like make it like if you can, maybe mix their weapons together and do it like the Ninja Turtles in freaking Injustice 2, and like maybe make costumes where it makes slight changes to the moveset, like different weapons. Like they basically have the swords, but they also have like the bows or the staffs or whatever the weapons are from the in-space Rangers. I think it'd be kind of cool, like if you can mix them up like that, or make it a team character where you switch in and out between the Rangers and make it just, instead of picking 2 characters for your team, you pick the Psycho Rangers and it's a team of mini 5 characters, and maybe their life bars are a little bit smaller. I think that'd be kind of cool. But like I said, more likely they'd pick a specific one, and because he's the leader, they'd probably go for Psycho Red, but also because one of the major characters in the team, because she survives so much, is Psycho Pink. They might want to go for Psycho Pink, and she'd have her bow, she'd have her sword, so it'd basically be the complete opposite, more of a powerhouse version of the Pink Ranger we already have, or the Pink Enforcer or whatever, one, like, so something like that that's more psycho, because she's like probably one of the craziest ones on the team, and she's also the one that's deemed the most important because she survives and then becomes like her own like villain for a short arc, I think, in Lost Galaxy, if I recall. Like there's one ranger that, like one of the Psycho Rangers that survives the second attempt, and I think it's her, and I think she's like one of the most important. So if they go for a specific one, she might be one too, and they might want to go for like their in like space mutant transformations. They can turn into monsters, so maybe her ultimate attack, like how the Rangers can summon their Zords, she turns into a giant monster form. Or they want to go for their Lost Galaxy form, which they don't have that. I don't know, but one of the freaking Psycho Rangers, please. And that's it for this list. I have the Psycho Rangers. I have the Quantum Ranger from Time Force. I have the Gold Zeo Ranger. I have Ecliptor. And then I also have the SPD Blue Ranger. Put in the comments away, think did any of these 5 you want to see in Power Rangers Battle for the Grid? What characters do you specifically want to see in Power Rangers Battle for the Grid? Power Rangers, the villains. Do you think we might actually eventually get characters that have their likeness, and we get some of the human villain characters or Rangers outside of their Ranger gear or something? You never know. It's like more of a budget game, so I don't think they probably would go for that. But anything's possible, especially if this game does really well. And put in the comments what you guys think, and let's see what you want to see for DLC. And that's it for this list. My name is Snipes1. Peace. Please subscribe if you want to. Have a lovely day. And I'll see you all later in the next video.